Test. There we go. Cool.
Unity version, I'm going to be using 2018.2. We can choose a location. I'll just use my projects folder. And finally, as our template, we want to make sure that we select 2D. Let's then hit create project, and Unity is going to open up a new empty.
I didn't change the save location. Somewhere in there.
Project. And now we can see we have this empty scene with only a main camera in it. And because we made sure to select 2D as the template, Unity has set up some different settings on our camera and in our editor to work well with 2D. Awesome! Now, when starting with an empty project, I really recommend visiting the Unity asset store to find some assets to use for your game. Of course, if you want, you can always replace them with your own custom assets later. Luckily, there are some really great free assets available that we can use. I've gone ahead and compiled a list of some of my favorites. If you want to check them out, you can use the link in the description. In here, we have a pack for putting together cool pixel art caves. There is a pixel art platformer pack, as well as some more toony assets. All these are based around tiles, and so will fit perfectly with the tile-based workflow. If you want to use the sprite-based workflow, there's also an incredibly detailed art pack, as well as a top-down dungeon pack that would work great for that. Some of these also include characters, but I've gone ahead and added a few separate ones just in case. Now, once you've picked something that you like, we have to get it into Unity. The way that we do this is by opening up the asset store window. So we'll go window, we'll go under general and select the asset store. You can also press Ctrl 9. We'll then
Still loading.
navigate to the package that we want to download. I'm just going to get the free platform game assets. It's right here, so we'll click on that. And
looks like they're going for a platformer again.
Click this red button to first download and then import it. We'll then get this window where we can see all of the different assets that are included in the pack. And if there's something in particular that you don't want, say you already have a character and don't need this one, we can simply uncheck it. But I'd like to import everything, so I'm just gonna select everything and hit import. This one is called Bayad Games, and under here we have the free platform game assets. And here we can see a bunch of different subfolders with the different aspects of our pack. And most packs will also come with some kind of a demo scene. In this case, there's a demo folder right here. If we open that up and double click on the scene to open it, we can then go into the scene view and we can see this nice example of how you can combine the different elements to create a level. You can of course select the 2D rec tool at the top here. The shortcut for this is the T key, and if you also make sure that you're in 2D mode at the top of our scene view, we can then go in and simply click and change different elements around. We can of course move them, rotate them and scale them as well. And so you can quickly start modifying these levels to make them your own. But of course we want to create our own custom level. So we'll go back to the default sample scene and we can now start dragging in assets to use them. And how you go about this is going to depend on the pack that you're using. This pack here splits up all the sprites into individual images. So if we go under say tiles and then PNG, we have some different sizes available here. I'm going to go under 256. I'm going to select the grass platform and drag it in. And that works right away. We have all of our different assets and each one of them is a separate image. So we can simply drag in some different images to sketch out a level. But what most 2D packs do is that they use a tileset. And a tileset is basically just a very large image with a bunch of sprites laid side by side. For example, if we go to the asset store and download the Sunny Land and open up the folder here, we can see that under artwork and then environment, in here we can see that there is indeed a file called Tileset. And if we have a look at this, we can see that it's basically just a bunch of smaller sprites in one larger image. Now if you want to learn how to create your own tilesets and set them up in Unity, we have a tutorial that I suggest you check out. But luckily this package has done
I will definitely need that.
Done all that for us. If we just select the tileset sliced here, we can see that they've actually gone in and marked all the different tiles that make up this tileset. And if we expand this arrow here, we can actually see each individual tile in our tileset. Pretty cool. And just like any other image, we can take any one of these and simply drag them in to the editor. Now this one is a lot smaller, but you can see it works just fine. So now that we know how to work with sprites, let's try and build out a quick level here. So we already have this grass platform here, that's great. I'm just going to place it here. Let's also add a background. So I'm going to go under new background, under PNG. I'm just going to select the low res version here, under background, and here we have another file. Let's simply drag that in as well. And we can see this looks nice in our camera, but we can also see that it's overlaid on top of our grass. And of course, we want our background to be behind it. For this, we use something called sorting layers. So to the right in our inspector here under the sprite renderer, we can see the setting called the sorting layer. If we click this, we can add a new sorting layer. This takes us to another menu where we can hit the plus sign to create a new layer. Let's call this one background. And if we want this to be behind the default layer, we actually need to put it on top. That's because this actually represents the drawing layer.
Just gonna go back and rewatch that real
You
quick.
can see the setting called the sorting layer.
Sorting layer,
Click
the
this,
sprite
we can
render.
add
Okay.
a new sorting layer. This takes us to another menu where we can hit the plus sign to create a new layer. Let's call this one background. And if we want this to be behind the default layer, we actually need to put it on top. That's because this actually represents the drawing order. In other
Right.
ways, we first draw our background and then we draw the default layer on top. And let's just go in and add another one here called the foreground in case you want to have some foreground elements as well. So now we can go into a new background and we can change the sorting layer here to background. And voila, our grass platform appears. We can also maybe add a coin to our game. To do that, we'll go under the coin animation. Let's go under PNG again. And let's just select the small version here. And as you can see, this has a bunch of different images. And if we go through these quickly, we can
It's
see
for
that they
the,
make up
animation.
an animation. So to add these as a single animated object, we simply select the first one, hold down Shift, and select the last one. And we then drag all of them in. Unity is going to notice that we are dragging in a bunch of images.
That's
So it's gonna
right,
ask
I
us
remember
to
that.
create a new animation with these images. I'm going to make a new folder for this. I'm going to store all of our animation in here. Let's open it up. And let's call this the coin animation. Let's hit save. And inside of our animation folder, Unity is now going to create both a animation file as well as an animator controller. And this is currently named after one of our images. I'm just going to rename this to coin animator. And now if we select our coin, we can see that it has an animator component as well. If we go to the animation window, which you can always find under Window, Animation, we can actually go through each individual image in this animation. If we hit play, we can play through it, or if we simply hit this button to play the game, we can see that the animation plays and repeats by default. So now we have an animated coin in our game. We can of course move this around and put it anywhere that we would like. And just like when creating any game in Unity, we can then add components to our different game objects in order to make them
And that's
do
where it needs
different
C#.
things. Say for example that we wanted this coin to have physics applied. Well, then we could go ahead and add a new component. We can go under physics
Box.
2D, and here we have a bunch of different
Mhm.
components for adjusting 2D physics on our game object. I'm just going to select the box collider 2D. If we then go into the scene view and select our coin and hit F to focus on it, we should be able to
that's
see
good.
that there's actually a green line surrounding our coin. It
Oh,
might not
that's
be
pretty
too
faint, but I
visible
can
from the
see it.
screen recording, but it is there. I'm just going to give it a size of 1 on the X. This way we can kind of see it more clearly. And the Y is just fine as it is. But adding a collider is not enough. If we want this to fall onto our platform, we also have to apply physics to it. To do this, we'll go add component and we'll search for rigid body 2D. This will apply physics to our coin, and if we now hit play, we should see that immediately our coin falls. However, because we don't have a collider
So that's the issue that I have, because I don't want it to fall. I want it to just go up and down and stuff, depending on what I want.
on our grass, it's just gonna fall right through our platform. So let's here go and add a box collider 2D, and we can go in and edit the collider here, and I'm just gonna drag the top a bit down so that it looks like our coin is landing at the center of our platform. I'm also gonna take the platform and drag it down a bit, and if we now hit play once more, we can see that the coin falls and lands on our platform. We can also see that we have this weird issue where sometimes
It's because they're
our
on the
coin
same
is
layer.
behind our platform and sometimes it's in front. And that's because they're currently on the same sorting layer.
Yep,
and not
that's
only
what I thought.
that, they have the same order within that layer. To change that, we can go to our coin here and
You
we
put
can
that
increase the
foreground?
order in layer. So if we set this to any value
Oh,
greater
okay.
than 1, it will be drawn on top of our platform. I'm just going to set it to something like 10, and now when we hit play, our coin always appears on top of our platform. So that is kind of the very basics of working with 2D objects in Unity. And currently we're just using the default sprite workflow. We can take any of these objects and drag it around freely. In other words, we aren't restricted to a grid. However, because this platform actually has a bunch of different tiles in it, it would work great with the tile-based workflow.
Which
So
is
let me
what I
just
want to
give you
do.
a quick preview of how that would work. If you want to learn more about using tile maps in Unity, we have a tutorial dedicated to that, so definitely check that out. So for now, I'm just going to take these two objects and remove them. And instead, I'm going to right click in our scene and I'm going to go 2D object and create a new tile map. This creates an object in our scene called grid. And as you can see, this does overlay a grid on top of our scene. I'm going to set the cell size of this grid to 2 by 2. This way it's a bit larger. And under this grid, we have the tile map. We can also go and open up the Tileset window. So we'll go Window, 2D, and select the Tile Palette. Let's dock this to the side of our scene view. And the tile palette is basically just a window where we add all of our tiles and then we can select between them in order to paint them into our scene. So I'm going to create a new palette here. Let's just name it something like Grass Platform Palette. I'm going to hit create. And I'm just going to store it in the base folder here, so hit select folder. And now we can simply drag sprites in here in order to add them to our palette. Of course, we have a bunch of tiles right here. So I'm just going to select all of them and drag them right in. And it's going to ask us where we want to generate all of the tile assets. I'm going to right click and create a new folder for this. Let's call it tiles. And let's hit select folder. It's then going to generate all of our tiles. And voila, we can now see all of our tiles inside of this window. And we can select any one of them by simply clicking on it. And by selecting the brush tool at the top here, we can then start painting them into our scene. We can also see that they don't quite line up with
I
our
was going to
grid.
say that.
To change that, we need to select all of our sprites, and to the right here, we'll change the pixels per unit. And each of these sprites is 256 by 256, and we want each one of them to be 2 units wide, because we set our grid to 2 by 2.
So divided by 2.
So we simply need to take this value and half it, and that makes 128. So we'll set the pixels per unit to 128. And if we then apply that, we can see that they snap right into place.
Awesome.
So I'm just going to use the paintbrush and eraser tool to paint a quick level here. Awesome. Again, I really suggest you check out our tutorial on tile maps if this is the workflow that you want to use. So hopefully that should give you an idea of what tools you have at your disposal when starting to make 2D games in Unity. Of course, this is only the beginning, and we'll be releasing new videos on the different aspects of making 2D games going forward, starting with player movement. If there are any particular subjects that you would like to see, like enemies, one-way platforms, or
actually
shooting,
pretty useful.
definitely let us know in the comments. Until then, I recommend just playing around with Unity and having some fun sketching out your own levels. Also, if you like this video and the content in general, consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon allows you to make a monthly donation.
Alright, I don't think there's anything else, so let me go ahead and check. I don't know what's up with this update check. Let me look that up. No. Alright. Yeah, I don't know why that's there. Can I close it? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so I kind of like the idea of using the asset store for now. Import through the package manager. Okay. I kind of want to... I liked how he had his project window over here. Yeah, like that. What do you have on the bottom? console and animation, yeah. Can clearly see that I don't really know what I'm doing because I can't figure out how to resize the windows correctly. What? Okay. What happens if I right click? Can I? Hit animation here, I think. I guess that's fine. I think it's because I'm on a laptop, so I can't have all of it here. And I'd like to make some stuff, but I don't have Photoshop is the issue.
Making your game art in tiles can be beneficial in a lot of ways.
This.
Because tiles are so modular, tile maps make it easy to create new levels and modify existing ones. Some good examples of games that utilize tile maps really well are of course classics like Mario and Pokemon, but also a lot of newer indie games like Spelunky and Stardew Valley take advantage of this art style. So in this video we'll have a look at how to use Unity's built-in tile map system. Also special thanks to Judeman, Befio, Infinity P started. So just open up Unity and currently we have nothing in here. But in order to start creating tile maps, we need to have a tile set. I went online and found this pretty cool tile set by Leonard Papin. As you can see, there are a bunch of different elements like rocks, dirt, grass.
That would be awesome.
Water. And if we have a look at the ground tiles only, this is what we see. Of course, if you want to learn how to create your own tile sets, I have a tutorial on how to do that in Photoshop. But there are really a bunch of tiles in here, and there are even multiple tile sets for the different elements in the scene. So just to keep things simple for this tutorial, I've gone ahead and created a simpler version of the tile set, and I'll of course have a download link for that in the description. Let's take this file and import it into Unity. Let's click on it, and you can see here I've just selected the most basic ones. Now first we want to make sure the texture type is set to Sprite 2D and UI. We'll then change the sprite mode from single to multiple because we have multiple sprites in here. We'll also change the pixels per unit to 32. The reason why is that the
64.
size of each tile in my tile map is 32 and I want one tile to be 1 unit big.
Oh, okay, because you get the 2 units in the other one.
Set the filter mode to point so it doesn't get blurred out. And we can also go down here and disable compression. Now if we apply these settings, we can open up the Sprite Editor, and here we want to define each individual tile. Luckily we don't have to do all this by hand, we can simply use the slice option up here, change from automatic to grid by cell size, because we know the size of each tile. That's of course 32 by 32 units, with no offset and no padding, and we can just go ahead and hit slice. And you can see it actually automatically registers all of our tiles. I definitely recommend you go through and see if everything is here. It certainly looks like it. With that we can simply hit apply, and if we now close down our sprite editor, we can drop down this menu on our object, and here we have each individual tile as a sprite. So next what we want to do is create a tile map. To do that we go to the hierarchy, right click, go to the object and select tile map. And you can see it all.
Do that.
Automatically creates this object called a grid. That's because all tile maps in Unity are rendered using a grid. So if we go to the scene view, we can see all of the grid lines, and of course in each of these grid cells we can now place tiles. If you've ever used the UI system, think of the grid just like a UI canvas. We can of course configure stuff like cell size and gap here, but in most cases you probably just want to leave those be. Then we can expand this object, and under here we have our tile map. Now you can consider a tile map in Unity kind of like a layer. If we want multiple tiles on top of each other, we simply want to create multiple tile maps that we can draw onto. So this here is our first tile map layer. And so we can call it something like tilemap underscore base, just to let ourselves know what we want to paint onto here. And our tile map has two components, a tile map, which has configurations for the layer, and a tile map renderer, where you can configure stuff like what material to use. But we just want to leave all that by default, and instead we want to go Window and bring up our tile palette. And this window is where we find all of our tile painting tools. We can go ahead and dock this to the right of our
tile
scene
palette.
view, figure stuff like what material to use. But we just want to leave all that by default, and instead we want to go Window and bring up our tile palette.
Yeah, okay. It's because I have the updated version. This came out in 2018, I believe. Yeah.
And this window is where we find all of our tile painting tools. We can go ahead and dock this to the right of our scene view, and maybe also give it
How do you dock it?
a bit more. We can go ahead and dock this to the right.
Oh, right. Yeah. I want to put it on the right side. Yeah, there. And then this, I want to put that. No, under it. Yes, there. That's how we did it. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Right of our scene view, and maybe also give it a bit more space. Now, as you can see, we have a bunch of different tools at the top. I'm going to show you what each of these do in a second. First, we want to create a palette, and a palette is basically just a collection of tiles that you can choose from at any given time. So we want to go ahead and create a new palette, and we'll call this palette something like ground tiles.
All right. And then it's going to want...
We just want it to be a rectangular grid, and we'll set the cell size to
He's probably going to put it in the
now we
root
can
there.
hit create. Now each palette is stored as an object in your project, so we could go and create a new folder here for all of our palettes.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
So I'm going to call this palettes, and we can go into the folder and hit select. And there we go, we now have an object in here called ground tiles. And you can also see it's selected right here. And in fact, it already tells you what to do. Drag tile, sprite, or sprite texture assets here in order to add them. So we can go to our tileset example and select each one of our sprites.
Okay, so let me go ahead and get this tile set real quick. Not working. What's this link look like? There we go. Now this is a Photoshop file, which I don't have Photoshop. So let me try importing that. This is the Tileset. Let me figure out what that error is real quick. More than one SDK active in your player settings. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting though. I don't know how to get rid of that error. Oh, right. Let me, how did he... Okay, so he changed it to multiple. And then we need to go ahead and Sprite Editor. Nope. I don't remember how to do that.
And then and there are even multiple tilesets for the different elements in the scene. So just to keep things simple for this tutorial, I've gone ahead and created a simpler version of the tileset, and I'll of course have a download link for that in the description. Let's take this file and import it into Unity. Let's click on it, and you can see here I've just selected the most basic ones. Now first we want to make sure the texture type is set to Sprite 2D and UI.
Which
We'll then
it should
change the
be
sprite mode from
automatically.
single to multiple because we have multiple sprites in here. We'll also change the pixels per unit to 32. The reason why is that the size of each tile in my tile map is 32, and I want one tile to be 1 unit big. Then because we're dealing with pixel art, we want to set the filter mode to point so it doesn't get blurred out. And we can also go down here and disable compression. Now if we apply these settings, we can open up the Sprite Editor, and here we want to define each individual tile. Luckily we don't have to do all this by hand, we can simply use the slice option up here, change from automatic
Is
to
it just too
grid by
short?
cell
Yeah.
size, because we know the size of each tile. That's of course 32 by 32 units, with no offset and no padding, and we can just go ahead and hit slice. And you can see it actually automatically registers all of our
Nice.
tiles.
Okay.
I definitely recommend you go through and see if everything is here. It certainly looks like it. With that we can simply hit apply, and if we now close down our sprite editor, we can drop down this menu on our object, and here we have each individual tile as a sprite. So next what we want to do is create a tile map. To do that we go to the hierarchy, right click, go to the object and select tile map. And you can see it automatically creates this object called a grid. That's because all tile maps in Unity are rendered using a grid. So if we go to the scene view, we can see all of the grid lines. And of course, in each of these grid cells, we can now place tiles. If you've ever used the UI system, think of the grid just like a UI canvas. We can of course configure stuff like cell size and gap here, but in most cases, you probably just want to leave those be. Then we can expand this object, and under here we have our tile map. Now you can consider a tile map in Unity kind of like a layer. If we want multiple tiles on top of each other, we simply want to create multiple tile maps that we can draw onto. So this here is our first tile map layer. And so we can call it something like tile map underscore base. Folder organized. Inside of this we'll create another folder called ground tiles. Let's hit select, and Unity will go through and generate all
Alright, he named it ground tiles, I didn't.
And as soon as it's done, we should see all of them in our tile palette. You can also see on the left hand side here that if we go under our tiles folder and under ground tiles, all of our tile assets are here. And if we select one of them, we can either change the sprite that the tile asset uses, we can tint it a certain color, or mess with the collider type. But again, for now, we'll just leave all of those as is. And this is where we get to the most annoying part of using tiles using the current tile system. Because you'll notice that our tiles are laid out in a very chaotic way.
Wait, what?
So now
okay, I see.
So now we're actually ready to start painting using our tiles. To do this, I want to switch to the brush mode. The shortcut for this is of course B. And now we can start selecting tiles inside of our tile map. So say we want to select the corner right here, and then simply move our mouse into the scene view in order to start placing these. You can also select multiple tiles if you want to paint more at a time. So I'm going to start painting away on a tiny level.
I will as well. Well, actually, let me see what he does first.
You'll notice if I switch to the game view now, I have these weird ugly lines. The reason why is we need to go to edit, project settings, and then quality. And in here we'll make sure to disable anti-aliasing.
Okay. project settings, I think he went. No. Where'd he go? He went to
Anti-aliasing
quality
and then
settings.
quality.
Project settings, quality settings.
And in here we'll make sure to disable anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is meant to blur out edges in 3-dimensional graphics, but since we want very
2D.
hard edges here in order to not see between the tile maps, we definitely want to have this disabled. So I've laid the foundation of my tile map here, and I want to move it kind of into the vicinity of my camera. So I'll take the selection tool, select the entire tile map, select the move tool, and then move it over. Some other tools that are
Okay. Let me go ahead and make like a basic kind of thing like he did. So we'll just do like that. Getting called on Discord again. Alright, so I have a little bit more time now, so I can go ahead and continue doing this. Oh, that needs to be a corner. And I think it needs to be big enough that it'll fit like the whole thing, so what I'm going to do is this. And now I see why he said that you can do it like that. Makes it a little bit easier. Nope. There, okay. So that's basically what he did.
handy is if you're using the brush tool and want to erase, we can simply hold down shift in order to do that. We can
Oh,
also
that's cool.
select the box tool. Using this we can fill a rectangular part of the map. You can also select a tile by using the mark tool. I normally just use this by holding down control and picking the tile that I would like to paint with. And finally we can use the bucket tool, the one on the far right, by hitting G, and this will fill out holes using the selected tile. So I think I'm gonna paint some water into my scene here. I'll see you in a second. And I'm also going to surround it with some grass.
Alright. I'm just gonna do this. And then grab this. These. Okay, he used the edges. Wrong side. Which one? I do not know. Did he do too thick? No. So I don't know what sprite he used, so I'm just gonna go with this because it's not terrible, and this is just a test. So, and then he went ahead and did just all grass. Mm. I need to zoom out. Periodically stop clicking just so I can control Z easier. And control Z doesn't like to work. He said shift click. Deletes. Alright, nice.
So now I'm satisfied with the base of my tile map, but I definitely want to overlay some objects on top of this. I especially want to add some rocky parts to my level. And you'll notice if I just select this and start painting on top of what I've already made, it
So
looks
new
really
tile
weird.
map, right?
And the reason why is that parts of these tile maps here are transparent. So we need the base layer to still be underneath. Luckily, we know that each tile map acts as a layer. So all we need to do is go into our grid, right click, go into 2D and create a
That's what I thought. Alright. New tile map.
another tile map. And we can now rename it to tilemap underscore rock. We also want to make sure to set the ordering layer for this to be greater so that all of the tiles that we paint appear on top.
10 again?
I'm just going to set it to 1. We can of course also put it on a separate sorting layer. Now we'll switch to our tile palette. We still want to paint using our ground tiles, but we want to change the active tile map from tile map base to tile map rock. And now, if we switch to the brush tool, you can see that we can easily start painting away with these rock sprites. There we go. So finally, I'll just take my camera
I'll
here
just do one.
and zoom it out a tiny bit so we can see more of the level. And we've now created our first level using tile maps in Unity. Of course, there's still so much you can add to this, but as a base, that looks awesome. So other than the stuff that Unity has currently built into the editor, they've also created a bunch of tile map features which aren't yet integrated. And you can actually find these on the Unity GitHub under 2D extras. I'll of course have a link for this in the description. If you want to use these yourself, simply hit clone or download, and you can download it as a zip file and open it right up in Unity. In fact, they also have another repository called 2D Tech Demos. I'll have a link for this as well. And this includes all the extra features along with example scenes. So if there's something you want to learn how to do, you can check out how Unity recommends you to do it. So that's pretty cool, and let me just go ahead and show you what some of this stuff is. So I've opened up the 2D Tech Demos.
Alright, I think I've got this good enough now. But, looking at it, just want to do that. Just for completion. Finish watching this.
And I've created an empty palette here. And if I now go to the project and right click, I can go into create. And I still have an option called tile here, but at the very bottom I also have options for animated tiles, pipeline tiles, random tiles, and a bunch of others. Let's just try out the animated tile. We'll call this one waterfall base, and this of course allows us to create tiles with animation. So in here we can define the number of animated sprites that you want to have in your animation.
Like
Let's
3
set
or
this
something.
to 5, and now we get 5 sprite slots. Let's take the first one here, let's search for waterfall. Let's select the first one here. Let's go through and do that until we've selected all of them. All 0 through 4 here. And the rest of the settings we can leave as is. If we now drag this into the tile palette, you can see that nothing really happens. But if we then take our paintbrush and make sure to create a tile map over here in the hierarchy. So right click to the object tile map. We can select our waterfall and paint it into our scene. And if we now hit play,
it's going to animate.
See our waterfall animating. Of course, it's currently doing so really slowly. To change
So
that,
we can see
go
it.
under grid, under the tile map, and change the animation frame rate. Let's bump this up to something like 15. And now when we hit play, we have an animating waterfall. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this one and rename it to waterfall foam. And I'm going to go through each sprite here and change it to the bottom of the waterfall. So there we go. We now drag this into our tile map as well. Select our brush tool, select it inside of our tile palette, and suddenly we can paint with it. If we now hit play, we can see that we've added a waterfall to our game. And this is just one example of the extra features. Another one is the ability to set up rule-based tiles. If we go into the scene view and erase what we have, we can instead change our palette to one of the included ones. Here I'm going to go under terrain tiles. I'm going to select one of the tiles in our terrain here, and I'm simply going to start painting. And you can see automatically Unity recognizes what tiles are nearby and inserts the appropriate one. Of course, we could do terrain tiles, instead change our palette to tiles. If we go into the scene view and erase what we have, we can instead change our palette to one of the included ones. Here I'm going to go under terrain tiles. I'm going to select one of the tiles in our terrain here, and I'm simply going to start painting. And you can see automatically Unity recognizes what tiles are nearby and inserts the appropriate one. Of course, we could do all of this by hand, but having a simple system like this just makes everything much quicker. And if we go inside of our tile map folder, under tiles and terrain tile, we can open up the example scene for this to see how Unity has laid this out. And we can also go under tile assets and select one of the assets. And here you can see all of the different sprites that make up this asset. So the left here are rules, in other words, how the tile should be designed. And to the right here, we specify a sprite that is designed in this way. So we have a filled one, we have one with 3 sides, we have one with 2 sides and a corner, we have one with just 2 adjacent sides, 2 opposite sides, and so on. If you want to set this up yourself, you of course need to create all the appropriate sprites. In that case, I would definitely recommend basing it off of the sprites that Unity have created for this example. So that should definitely be enough to get you started. And if you're hungry for more features, just check out the Unity GitHub repos. There are some nice hidden gems there. That's pretty much it for this video. If you want to learn how to create your own tile sets, I have a tutorial.
Alright, well that's pretty useful. I now understand that in order to make my game I want to use Tilesets, so it's pretty useful. So now I just need to figure out how to make tile sets myself, which is one of the other videos he had with Photoshop. Probably won't do that myself, I'll probably get somebody else to do that for me so I can get into the coding and actually making the maps and stuff myself easier. But yeah, that'll work pretty well, I think.